Story All Summer in a Day. In my last class, I had discussed that Margaret was locked up in a closet by her friends, and these wicked children even lied to her that the sun is not going to be out that day. But the fact was, they all were going out to enjoy in the sun, whilst Margaret would be locked up in the closet. So she pleads, she cries, shouts, beats the door, but to no avail. They don't listen to her, they don't listen to her pleadings, and they simply lock her up and they rush back to the classroom because the teacher would be there anytime. So this is the wickedness that is done by the other children. So while they go out to see the sun, Margaret doesn't get an opportunity to go out and see the sun because she is locked up in the closet by the other wicked children. So now let's see what happens in the further course of the story. Ready, children? She glanced at her watch. So then the teacher arrived and asked the children whether they were ready to go out and see the sun or not. Yes, said everyone. Are we all here? Yes. So when the teacher said, are we all present here? Then the children did not mention about Margaret, and they simply said, yes, they all were there. And then they were ready to go out. The rain slacked still more. They crowded to the huge door. The rain stopped. So now the rain started becoming lesser and lesser and lesser, and they all rushed to the door, and finally the rain stopped. So that was the day that they all had been waiting for so eagerly. And then what happened? The rain stopped all of a sudden. So now when the rain stopped, see how the writer has described it. It was as if in the midst of a film concerning an avalanche, a tornado, a hurricane, a volcanic eruption, something had first gone wrong with the sound apparatus, thus muffling and finally cutting off all noise, of all the blast and repercussions and thunders, and second, ripped the film from the projector and inserted in its place a beautiful tropical slide which did not move or tremor. So when the rain suddenly stopped, it was as if a running movie had been stopped. And that also how? In the midst of a film concerning an avalanche. So avalanche means an ice or snow falling rapidly down the side of a mountain. So it was as if in the midst of a movie concerning an avalanche, tornado, a hurricane, volcanic eruption, something had first gone wrong. Something was wrong there with the sound apparatus. And then what happened? Finally cutting off all noise, blasts, repercussions and thunders. Second, ripped the film from the projector and inserted in its place a beautiful tropical slide which did not move or tremor. So it was as if that particular scene had been replaced by a slide which did not move. So when you think of hurricane, tornado, avalanche, you know there is a lot of movement in those activities or those natural calamities. A lot of sound, a lot of noise there. And when these things occur, people really become very, very frightened. And then the excitement when you see this kind of movie and the threat which you feel, that is really unimaginable. So it was as if that kind of slide had been either removed or stopped by somebody. So when the rain appeared, this is how the author has explained in the chapter. This is what happened. So as if a movie having hurricane, tornado, avalanche, and then what happened? Suddenly something went wrong, and secondly, as if that slide had been either replaced or moved by somebody. The world ground to a standstill. So suddenly it seemed like everything came to a standstill and everything was quiet and everything stopped moving there. So as if the whole world had become silent. The silence was so immense and unbelievable that you felt your ears had been stuffed or you had lost your hearing altogether. So the silence which came about when the rain stopped was so immense that you could actually feel that somebody had stuffed something in your ears, or maybe you had stopped the power of hearing. So it was so silent. All of a sudden it became silent. It was raining like anything. Downpour of rain, and suddenly everything stopped. Everything became so silent. So you can imagine the situation there. The children put their hands to their ears. They stood apart. The door slid back and the smell of the silent, waiting world came into them. So the children just put their hands over their ears. They stood apart. And then what happened? The door slid and the smell of the silent, waiting world came into them. So the children, eagerly waiting for that day, suddenly they got to experience that. The sun came out. So finally, the sun came out. It was the color of flaming bronze and it was very large. So the color of the sun was as if a flaming bronze was there, and it was very large. And the sky around it was blazing blue tile color, and the sky had become blue in color, the color of a tile. Very, very bright and blue sky. And the sun was looking huge and round, and it was like a flaming bronze. So how beautifully the writer has described the sun, the sky, comparing it with various other things which are present in our nature. So this is how beautifully he has described everything. And the jungle burned with sunlight as the children, released from the spell, rushed out, yelling into the springtime. And the jungle burned with sunlight, and the children, as if they had been released from a magical spell, they rushed into the springtime. So they just wanted to explore everything that day, because they would not get to see the sun at least for 7 years. So that's why that was the day, that was the opportunity that they had. So they just rushed outside, because they knew that now it would be a long time when they would see the sun again. Now don't go too far, called the teacher after them. You've only 2 hours, you wouldn't want to get caught out. So the teacher warned them, please don't go too far away. You just have 2 hours in your hand. The teacher even gave them a warning. But they were running and turning their faces up to the sky and feeling the sun on their cheeks like a warm iron. But they were running and turning their faces up to the sky and feeling the warmth of the sun on their cheeks like a warm iron. They were taking off their jackets, letting the sun burn their arms. So they just took off their jackets so that the sun would burn their arms. They would get the heat of the sun on their arms, because that seldom happened. So children so excited to run and jump and hop and skip and play around in the sun. So excited that they just let go of their jackets and they just wanted to warm their body in the sun. Oh, it's better than the sun lamps, isn't it? Much, much better. They stopped running and stood in the great jungle that covered Venus. So now, all of a sudden, they stopped running and they stood in the great jungle that covered the planet Venus, that grew and never stopped growing tumultuously. So tumultuously making an uproar even as you watched it. It was a nest of octopi, clustering of great arms of flesh like weed, wavering, flowering in this brief spring. So the jungle would never stop growing. So many varieties of trees and plants and weeds and everything was found. So it would never stop growing. So what happened? It was the color of rubber and ash, this jungle, from the many years without sun. So since the jungle had not got to see the sunlight for so many years, it had become the color of the ash and the color of the rubber. The jungle all faded because there was no sun. Because we know even the jungle forest, they need sunlight in order to have color and to survive. So it was surviving due to the rain, but there was no sunlight. So due to that, the color was all faded, like color of ash, color of rubber. It was the color of stones and white cheeses and ink, and it was the color of the moon. All white, all pale, all faded. No green color at all could be seen there. It was a jungle, but only for namesake. The green color was completely missing from it because of the lack of sunlight. And what happened? It was the color of ash, color of rubber, color of cheese, and color of the moon. All white and pale because of the continuous rainfall. The children lay out laughing on the jungle mattress, and they heard it sigh and squeak under them, resilient and alive. So the children lay out laughing and shouting and screaming, and they heard it just sigh and squeak under them, resilient and alive. Very, very lively. They ran among the trees, they slipped and fell. So when they were running among the trees, they just slipped and fell. They pushed each other. So in an excitement, they just pushed each other, ran here, ran there. They even slipped and fell. But they did not bother. They were so excited to run around. And then what happened? They played hide and seek and tag, but most of all, they squinted at the sun until the tears ran down their faces. So squinted means just look through a small opening. So just looked at the sun through a small opening until tears ran down their faces. So this is how the children were thoroughly enjoying the sun that day. And because that would hardly happen there in the planet Venus. So they were running, playing hide and seek, playing tag, and then they just happened to look at the sun, just peeping through the sun. Just to have a look at it until tears ran down their faces. They put their hands up to that yellowness and that amazing blueness, and they breathed of the fresh, fresh air and listened to the silence which suspended them in a blessed sea. So no sound and no motion. So what happened? They just put up their hands to the yellowness of that sun, that amazing blueness of the sky that breathed of the fresh, fresh air. And they listened to that silence which was there. No sound, no motion. They just looked up at the sky. They felt the sky. They felt the warmth of the sun. And there was absolute silence, no sound, no motion. And this is how they were thoroughly enjoying that day. The children, of course, because if children don't get to play and run around, then the whole childhood gets spoiled. Their whole existence gets wiped out. This is what the children feel like when they don't get to run and play. So that day was their chance, and they were enjoying every bit of that chance which was given to them. They looked at everything and savored everything. They enjoyed thoroughly. They took in everything, whatever was being given to them. Then, wildly like animals escaped from their caves, they ran and ran in shouting circles. So just like the wild animals which escaped from their caves, the children also that day, they were running like wild animals and in shouting circles. They ran for an hour and did not stop running. So they kept on running continuously for 1 hour and did not stop running. because they were just behaving like wild animals which had run from the cave. And then, in the midst of their running, one of the girls wailed. Everyone stopped. The girl standing in the open held out her hand. "Oh, look," she said, trembling. They came slowly to look at her open palm. So now what happened? One of the girls, she just started shouting, crying out, wailing. And the others were wondering what has happened. Then she just held out her hand and said, look here. They just came and looked at her open palm. In the center of it, cupped and huge, was a single raindrop. She began to cry looking at it. They glanced quietly at the sun. So they were all in the midst of their play when suddenly one of the girls, she just held out her hand and she said, "See." And there was a raindrop there. And this girl started crying and all of them glanced quietly at the sun. Oh, so now they knew they would not be able to be out for many hours now, not even hours. Now they might have to go back because it had started drizzling again. So they were very disappointed when they came to know that. A few cold drops fell on their noses and their cheeks and their mouths. So now, in fact, it had really started drizzling. So few on their nose, few on their cheeks, few on their mouths. It had started drizzling. They started feeling the drizzle there. The sun faded behind a stir of mist. A wind blew cold around them. Suddenly, the sun disappeared and wind started blowing them. They turned and started to walk back towards the underground house, their hands at the sides, their smiles vanishing away. So now what happened? They started going back to the underground house again because it had started raining. So their hands at their sides and the smiles all vanishing. So change of emotion. Just a few moments back, they were so happy, excited, gay, running here, shouting and screaming, falling here, falling there. All of a sudden, their emotion changed. Now they were very, very sad. A boom of thunder startled upon them, and like leaves before a new hurricane, they tumbled upon each other and ran. So there was thunder and lightning, and then pushing each other, they just ran towards the underground house. Lightning struck 10 miles away, 5 miles away, a mile, a half mile. So there was thunder and lightning. The sky darkened into midnight in a flash. Again, the sky became completely dark. It was as if it was midnight, just in a flash of a second. They stood in the doorway of the underground for a moment until it was raining hard. Then they closed the door, heard the gigantic sound of the rain falling in tons, avalanches everywhere and forever. So for some time they stood in the doorway, and after that, when it was like pouring like anything, heavy rainfall, then again they closed the door and went inside. Will it be 7 more years? Yes, 7. So they asked the teacher again. Again now, will we get to see the sun after 7 years? And the teacher said, yes, after 7 years we'll get to see the sun. Then one of them gave a little cry. Margaret! What? So suddenly they remembered Margaret. And they remembered that she was still in the closet there. She's still in the closet where we locked her. Margaret! They stood as if someone had driven them like so many stakes into the floor. They looked at each other and then looked away. So they looked at each other and then looked away. They glanced at the world that was raining now and raining steadily. They could not meet each other's glances. So they could not see each other. They could not meet each other's glances because they were so guilty. They were guilty of the fact that they had locked up Margaret in the closet. And they were feeling very bad. That's why they could not see each other's glances. Their faces were solemn and pale. They looked at their hands and their feet, their faces down. Faces became serious, solemn and pale, and they looked at their hands and their feet and their faces were all down. They couldn't face each other because of the guilt which was there inside their heart. Because they did not let Margaret see the sun. Only they went out and enjoyed themselves, whereas Margaret was inside the closet. And poor Margaret, she was there all alone and nobody cared about her. They were so wicked. These children were so wicked. But suddenly when they remember, then they started feeling very guilty. Margaret, one of the girls said, well, no one moved. Go on, whispered the girl. So now they all wanted to go there and bring out Margaret from inside the closet. They walked slowly down the hall in the sound of cold rain. So very slowly they went down to the hall. They turned through the doorway to the room in the sound of storm and thunder, lightning on their faces, blue and terrible. So they just went down to the hall and then with the thunder and lightning on their faces, blue and terrible, they walked over to the closet door slowly and stood by it. Now they just went and they didn't go and knock at the door or open the door all of a sudden. They just went there and stood by the door just to see what was happening there, or maybe just to get a hint of what was going on there. Behind the door closet was only silence. They couldn't hear anything. They couldn't hear banging, shouting, screaming. There was only silence behind the door. They unlocked the door even more slowly and let Margaret out. So when they heard nothing there, I think they were even more frightened as to something might have happened to Margaret. So what they did was they slowly went there and let Margaret out of the room. So this story ends in a little positive note. Though the children very wicked, we could see in the very beginning of the story, children were very wicked, and here whatever they had done was a very wicked act. But in the end, there's a note of optimism. Optimism in the sense like the children at least realized their mistake. They were guilty and they were shameful for whatever they had done to Margaret. And at least they went there and brought her out. So this particular story, though it does not start in a very positive note, but ends in a very positive note. At least the children realizing their mistake and feeling guilty for whatever they had done. Guilty for their sins, we can say. This is almost a sin which they had committed by not letting Margaret enjoy the sunlight which they thoroughly enjoyed. So poor Margaret did not get to see the sunlight, and now she has to wait for 7 more years to see the sunlight unless her parents take her back to the earth. So that is what we learnt in our last class, that her parents were planning to take her back to earth. So if that is done, then she will get to see the sun every day. But if that is not done, then Margaret has to wait for 7 more years in order to see the sunlight. Just to see the sunlight, she has to wait for 7 years. So this is something very, very wicked which the children had done. And even they themselves did not get to enjoy the sunlight for a very long period of time. Because after some time, it started raining again. And God had not given them also an opportunity to watch the sun for a very long period of time. And Margaret, not at all. She didn't get even a glance of the sun because she was locked up in the closet by her wicked friends. So this is a story, all summer in a day. Because they got to experience that summer, that sun only in a day. Only in a day. That also for a very short period of time. That is why the story, all summer in a day. In just one day, they had to experience all of the summer season, we can say. So just for a very short period of time, that also. So this is the explanation of the story, All Summer in a Day, written by Ray Bradburry. So class 10, I just want you all to go through the story once more, and I shall be giving you the word meanings and the other exercise related to the chapter in the next class. But please revise the chapter, go through the chapter, and if there is anything you have not understood, you are most welcome to clarify and ask your doubts. Thank you.